All right, everyone, welcome to Smiles Rants number, I don't know, like 8 or something. It's been a while. Been a slice. We're gonna go over age 99 proposed changes. Just for the record, you cannot find them in the forum where you might usually find them. You can only find them currently anyways, in the news tab on Muga. Not even in announcements yet, just in the news tab. Let's see what we got. We've got age 99 proposed changes. Ambush, increased kills. I think that's a great change. I've been saying it for a while. I know a few other top people have been talking about it, but there's not really a lot of reasons to ambush in a lot of wars. It's great out of war. It's great for just playing land games and trading kills and stuff, but it it doesn't do enough, and it's kind of expensive. I think focusing on the kills of it is a smart way to do it because I'm not sure if there's a good mechanical way to make it worth, missing out on the honor and the chains that you would otherwise do and the desyncing armies. But being able to focus on the kills is nice. Peasants killed on massacre reduced 30%. So this is basically undoing the change from age 94 that increased peasant kills by 50%. We're going back to standard peasant kills on massacres. This is something I personally have pushed for a lot because I think that no massacre shouldn't be a way that you control the population on core. It should be a way to kill thieves and wizards. And it's fine that it kills some peasants, but I don't think the amount of peasants it was killing before was very fair. It was almost 50% on regular attacks in war, and that's just crazy talk. Cancel their mentor. It's a nice quality of life. Small buff to offense from TGs. I like this as well. I think we'll see in the rest of the changes that the balance of Thief Mage defense and attacker offense has gone a little bit skewed towards the TM favors. So I like the idea of slightly increasing TGs to balance that a bit. Increased library effectiveness. I think that's unnecessary or even a little bit scary. Um, Science already scales so well into the late age that even small changes can really mess up things. We're back to the good old days of choosing between acres or honor for your war win bonus. Not sure if that'll be a good thing. I mean, I think that's how the game should be, but I think it doesn't work as well in the current climate with less than 2,000 players. You're going to see even more separation between kingdoms, but is what it is. Everyone's just going to pick honor every time, except for like two kingdoms, I think. That's just my guess. Um, Fixing out of range wars is smart. It was pretty easy to, just attack whoever's number one a whole bunch, war them at double net worth, and usually they're the ones who leave first because sitting around in war is not helping them. So it was sort of a cheater way to farm a lot of war win points. Not many people did it, but it happened to us once and we got a lot of points. So after that happened, I said, hey, this should probably be fixed. Removing a lot of support spells. So these are the main two. So you're not going to have that freely given minus 20% thief and mage damage. You'd throw that onto big core, anyone being targeted. Your rogues always had divine shield, your casters always had illuminate shadows. So what this does is it nerfs everything except clerics. Now clerics are going to be quite a bit stronger because they keep those spells. Um, so this is a nerf and a buff to TMs because TMs benefited, I think, from these the most because they were harder to Mystic Vortex off. Whereas, or if you were reasonably assured they had shadows up, it was pretty easy to toss in a Mystic Vortex or two. So it's really it's like a nerf to the defenses of TMs. So I think that's nice. With Last Age's thief damage changes, I think this balances things a bit. You could get pretty silly with shadows. and artisan and barrier ritual and the damage nerfs and all sorts of things stacking, and you could get it almost impossible to do thief damage to certain procs. Support spell Mystic Vortex. I've been asking for that for a long time. I'm very happy with that. Um, Basically, the mechanics in War for doing an intra-kingdom Mystic Vortex are all messed up. It costs 3 mana, whereas, offensive spells are casting 2. I'm pretty sure once you declare war, you're getting a penalty on intra-casting, as if you were casting on someone who was in war when you weren't. Because it seems to me, at least, that Mystic Vortex is a lot easier when you're sitting out of war. Could just be, small sample size. I'm talking out my ass there. I really like the idea of it. Now, it's going to make it really easy to, Mystic Vortex, meteor showers off of your rogues and stuff. So maybe it's a bit overpowered. But that'll just be something for you to adjust. Take intel, see if they're losing troops. They're not losing troops. You can recast, and you're going to be really straining their mana. We'll see how it is. Maybe it needs to be weaker. Mind Focus is buffed, but I believe it's moving off of Mystic, so it's not going to be multiplying quite as hard as it was. Seemed to me like Mystics were just gaining way too many wizards too fast at 2.5 times wizard buff. A bit crazy if you ask me. Now, actually getting to the races. Avians. So avians compared to last age are almost the same. I can just pull up quickly. Last age final changes. So we're seeing avians are a little faster, a little more birth rate. These are pretty minor changes. They now have greater protection, which is a nice little defensive bonus. They've got the same elites and the same spec. They no longer have a building efficiency penalty. So really small buff, really small buff, really small buff, medium buff with the BE, and then less losses when ambushed. I'm not sure if that's going to be troops or land. Either way, it's helpful, but not a huge deal. I think avians were decently strong last age as is, but they're not gaining any offense, and I think we'll see that that might be an issue for people as we go through the rest of the changes. So overall, it's a modest buff to avian without really changing the flavor of avian at all. Dark elf. We have same room cost benefit, training ground. So that's, when you're hybriding or you're pure attacking, it's, a couple percentage land here and there. They're getting access to mind focus, so this means that even as an attacker, they're going to be able to find some wizards pretty easily. I think that's a really nice benefit for them, because it stacks with this. You want to be able to cast efficiently, but what you're seeing is that they don't have any like power benefits. They don't have TPA or WPA or anything like that. So they need a little something to get themselves off the ground. So I think that's nice. Thief cost penalty, I don't think that matters really at all. I believe that elite is quite a bit different. So used to be they had a big O spec and a defensive elite. So this meant they had really crazy offense, but they kind of bled pretty fast in war. Now their offense potential's higher, but they gotta pay for those elites. So I'm gonna say it's probably about average. It's not gonna be as high as it was at the start of last age, but they definitely last in war a lot better. But they don't have that nice defense bonus anymore. So I think the worry people are going to have with Dark Elves is that they just get chained too easily because they're used to having a bit more defense coming in. But if you can keep that in mind and work with your strengths, it's decent. And they no longer have that birth rate penalty, which is really nice if you actually want to run an attacker. That's a really rough thing to live with. So, you know, uh, overall, Dark Elf's pretty modest. I don't really see it excelling at anything. So it's really all about how much can you throw wizards onto your attacker and make that WPA helpful to you. And if you're not doing that, then you're probably not picking Dark Elf. Dwarf looks pretty similar. Same bonus, same bonus. I don't think this is worth a huge amount. They've got Illuminate Shadows. So between building efficiency on their watchtowers, minus damage, Illuminate Shadows, Dwarf has got that really tanky, strong against uh, strong against thieves for an attacker, or as a hybrid. You can vary your build a lot. I feel like this should also have cost attached to it. This is construction time. I feel like this should be construction cost. Maybe they just want it to be faster without cost. I don't know if that's a typo or just a totally different change. If this is just a change, then it's going to be crazy because you can get to 1-tick build times really fast doing that if you can manage the cost. So I know some people that are going to go crazy if that goes through as is. Otherwise, we see their offense goes up by 1, so that's nice. Fair bit of offense increase. A couple nice little bonuses. Illuminate Shadows, this buff. They're the same old, same old. They're never going to be the highest offense attacker. They're never going to be the fastest attacker, but they're going to be tanky. They're going to be a pain in your butt, and you're never going to feel like you can actually deal with them as quickly as you want. In general, I find dwarves get a little bit ignored if you just have a couple of them in your lineup, or even if you have a lot of them in your lineup. They're going to get just ignored, and so you want to play them in a way that they best exploit having a little bit more space. So we'll see how that goes. Overall, kind of okay. Without the minus cost, that's like my favorite benefit to Dwarf is being able to build swap cheaply. As the age goes on, build cost so much that's basically like you're deciding between swapping builds or having a whole dragon. That's usually the bonus I like for Dwarf. But Dwarf's pretty strong. It's just nice to have a little more offense. I think elite costs are up in general, and Dwarf does really well with banks and homes and farms and all that sort of stuff. So Dwarf seems nice. A little bit more offense goes a long way on Dwarf compared to some other people. Happy with that. We have new race. We have Dryad. Got free food. So no farms mid-age and on. That's like 6% land. 0.6 runes per tick. Not exactly sure how many hours that is. Figure that out quick. Hours are 12 runes a day. So you have 100% land. That's 60 runes a tick. So it's like 5% towers, 5% food. That's like 10% free land. Town Watch, really good for chaining. Mist, really good for chaining. An extra general, really good once you're chained. Or if you can fit it into nightmare setups. Depending on what's going on, it's pretty hard to use 5 generals in range in war at the onset, but we'll see how it goes. They've got +1 D-spec and a huge elite, -5 pop, -5 build efficiency. So, -5 pop, not the end of the world. Think of it as having think of this as like 2.5% population, and then maybe you've got another half elite gone or something. So, hmm, not sure. Uh, between Between these benefits, Mist and the D-Spec, I feel like you can kind of just make it a wash with like almost no penalty, almost no bonus, and just like is a 17 elite worth 17 elite and one general and watch on a blank slate worth it? Maybe. Um, it's only like 10-15% more offense than some other picks, and basically make it a wash. So you've got the highest offense guy with an extra general and town watch, and worth something. Uh, have to compare it to Orc and Undead. I think that's the style of attacker it's meant to be. That's what you got to compare it to. Pretty expensive elite. If you imagine all attackers having a mix of O-specs and elites, it changes the balance a lot more than if you assume everyone's pure elite. For my style of balance and play, I kind of assume everything is pure elite because that is attainable most of the time. For some brackets, that's just not the case. So, gotta factor that in for yourself. Add this in here too. And go down to Elf. In addition to normal effects, guilds each generate 6 runes, so that's effectively half a tower per guild. So in war, if you're running 20 guilds, it's like running 10 towers. You're probably still going to run towers on top. If you had a weird build where you started lower WPA, you ran really high guilds, maybe there's something to happen there. I'm not sure. It's a little bit of something something. In war, it's worth 5 or 10 extra towers. I don't think you're going to see people running more than 20 guilds in war, because you're not gaining any extra effect from that other than growing wizards. But in pump times, like end of war ceasefire, and even just sitting out a war with a 40 guilds or something, you're going to have an absolute buttload of runes. So I think that's pretty nice. It's in war on 20 guilds, it's about the same as plus 50% power effect they already had. Maybe slightly better, slightly worse in different ratios. But in end of war ceasefire and out of war, you're probably looking at like having way more runes than you know what to do with. Depends what happens, bro. Depends what happens. The spell duration is nice, assuming you're a duration caster, but even if you're not, affects spells too. So it's a slight mana buff, helps you farm a bit more, lets your self spells last longer. Used to be a lot better with short duration like Chastity and ET. That bonus tick or two you felt it a lot more. On the longer spells, I mean 20% is still 20% overall, but didn't quite notice its impact as much, I found. Apparently they used to have a TG nerf. I didn't even realize. That's been swapped out to an explore cost. I don't think either are really that big a deal. Look at their elite. Same elite, but they're back to that 12D spec. So that's a huge buff for every kind of elf, whether you're attacking or hybrid or pure TM. Uh, the 12 defense, it's so much defense, and it's really nice. If you look at spells, they've got Illuminate Shadows. I don't know who else is going to get Illuminate Shadows. I know Dwarf has it. Clerics will have it. Doesn't look like Fairy or Gnome or Halfling have it. So they're going to be the safest Mystic by far. Having that stacking minus damage in there is so important when it comes to protecting your wizards and avoiding propaganda. But they do lose some important spells. They lost Invisibility, they lost Chastity, and those are two super important spells for general control. Uh, Invis is good on any kind of hybrid, any kind of TM. It really helps as a mystic when you can't fit in that many thieves' dens. Being able to night strike people and rob with Invis is super nice. So, overall, it's overall quite a bit buffed. They got some extra defense, they got some extra safety, extra output. They're just losing a little bit of that like hybrid power. And by hybrid I mean like thief and wizard combo. Um Fairy. Fairy used to have 25% WPA, but now they're also getting plus TPA, so they're getting like plus 20% based off last age. Similar spell list. Just gaining Chastity. So Chastity moved to Fairy from Elf. I don't think that's a huge deal. The TPA and WPA kind of even out. It does mean, however, that the most output of WPA is on the Elf now with Mage's Fury. But your all-around defense is best on Fairy. Holmes holding 5 less pop is pretty rough. That's going to cost you, 5% pop if you're running about 20% homes. So you run homes because you want population, you run homes because you want birth rate, you run homes because you want less jobs so you get higher BE. Is it worth running the homes without the pop? Maybe not. Maybe still. In the early age, maybe you just run an extra 5% of your various war buildings and you just treat this sort of like a birth rate penalty. Later age, I think you can basically just swap out homes for libraries and it's not that big of a loss. I think that's already what most TMs start to do in the later age. So I think if you just try to throw 20% homes on your TMs, that your fairy might sim out a bit worse with this penalty. But I think if you play around it, it's just not that big a deal. Uh, Ghost Workers kind of is good enough to work with less homes. Uh, you just got spells you can't really ignore. You've got a bonus that works on everything. And they've changed that 13 defense elite. Oh, everyone's paying way more for their elites. So, oh, they also got minus O spec. So yeah, Fairy's going to be a little bit worse at attacking early age, but once they get those elites stacked up, they're going to be monsters. You just got to figure out how to work around this penalty. I think Fairy's really good. I think Elf's really good. End of the day, your main qualifier for can I be a TM is how much defense you have. So it's got defense, so it'll work. Gnomes. Do we have gnomes? No, we don't have 10% population, credits and credits train thieves, a little bit of massacre immunity, quick feet, no penalties, basically only specs. They got a really cheap elite that's slightly better. You'll train whatever excess gold you have into them, but I don't think you're going to push super duper hard into having those pure elite offenses for Gnome. Because it's got so little defense, you actually end up losing a bunch of your offense, getting hit at home and being ambushed. So you might actually like prefer at least 50% O spec, which means you've got your whole end of war ceasefire to pump wizards and pump universities. So when you can avoid, so they have extra good soldiers. Don't knock that. That's really strong if you know what you're doing. So 10% pop's interesting. I usually, when I'm looking at pop, I take that pop bonus and I add it only one place. So 10% pop, 2.5 PPA is your standard. I put that all into offense and then compare the offense to another race. Or I put it all into defense and I compare the defense of another race. And that's sort of how I evaluate their effectiveness. So for Gnome, I would say you're running now 15 O-specs per acre as an attacker instead of 12 elite per acre on another 4. So I evaluate the offense of 12, avian elites or 12 orc elites versus my 15 O-specs. And if my O-specs come anywhere close to being good enough, then it's a good pick. And it's a good pick because you get that bonus from End of War Ceasefire where you're not spending as much gold. You can use this population in other ways to gain more income, to draft higher, all sorts of benefits in that way. Credits gained in combat is often kind of useless. I don't really care about that. In war, you can't use credits. At least training credits, build credits are great. Out of war, I just don't hit that many people out of war that I need to stack credit bonuses. Credits to train thieves, really good when you can use credits. Again, this is an out of war, in war thing, and if you think you have peasants in war, I suggest that you probably don't. Yeah. The minus damage from massacre attack is mostly a measure to, I think, combine with this credits to train thieves. You take less mass damage, you maintain your thieves, and you can keep thieving people as a sort of attacker-thief hybrid. I think that's the goal of this. Whether it works, who knows. So you have to do that calculation. If the calculation is there for offense, then it's a good pick. If the calculation is there for defense, then it's a good pick. I'm guessing it's not there for defense because you're looking at 20 to 30% more defense on Elf, Fairy. I don't think 10% pop is worth that much defense. Not when you combine other bonuses that they have. So probably not a great pure TM. Not sure if it's even a great hybrid. I think you can throw some thieves on it, throw some wizards on it, and it does okay. I think it might be okay as like a low net worth attacker that's just a little bit faster and maybe surprises some people. Because when you run only specs, your kingdom page on bot doesn't look very scary because there's no hidden extra defense in there. So keep your eye out for Gnome. Plus population gets really scary really fast. If you ignore it, you will lose to Warbirds when we pick it. Halfling, extra home population, thief cost, they didn't have that. No bonus TPA, but they do have bonus damage instead. Got invis. And they've got Divine Shield. So currently the way to evaluate homes is 10% homes is worth 4% population. So if your TMs have 25% homes, they've got plus 10% population. And that's just sort of how a baseline evaluation of if you want homes and what homes do. Pretty much just you're converting build space for pop space. And it also gives you a lot of building efficiency because you have less jobs. So, that's just how that is. So going from plus 10 to plus 18 means instead of plus 4% per 10 homes, it's plus, 7.5%, 7%. So now you've got 30 homes is worth 20% population instead of 12. Pretty big. Pretty big. It's pretty big. It's probably worth more population than Gnome. So, only though if you can build and keep the homes, which means you can't really run a 30 home attacker and have it work out because you just when you gain and lose the land, the homes don't really matter anymore. So it's really a bonus that works well for either doing one super big pump, where you just have like you just run 40 homes and you build like 20 O specs per acre and you slam into people like that. But you're very fragile. You can't do that and then grow and then sort of keep the land working very well. I've seen it tried, so, But on defense, you just run as many homes as possible, such that your thieves' dens or your watchtowers are still high enough percentage that they work. And you can kind of treat homes as better forts instead. You just run a few forts to be efficient. So rather than 20 forts, you run 10 forts and an extra 10 homes. You know, rather than 25 thieves' dens, you run 15 thieves' dens and another 10 homes. And you just add in extra D-specs, extra elites, extra thieves. Got invis, which stacks well with high population of thieves because that just helps your sustain. And assuming you're not running maximum thieves' dens, then the minus losses are really useful. Cunning damage buff. I don't know how strong that is. Look at my Excel sheet. Oh, how good is a million cunning? That's So a million cunning is 30% more damage, which would make it 40% more damage with a plus 35%. So if you're pushing cunning, this bonus is worth an extra 10% off damage. That's pretty strong. Now, if you're only kind of pushing cunning because you like having TPA, then it's only worth 5-6% damage. So, it's nice. I don't think it's crazy big or anything, but damage is damage, super important. So with this population and having the chance for this elite, I think Halfling's gonna probably have the most defense of any TM. Uh, I know some people will say that Fairy will still beat them out, but I'm not so sure. I think that Halfling is gonna have the best defense, the best building efficiency, but what they don't have is any sort of modifier, right? They don't have TPA, they don't have WPA. I mean, they've got a little bit of TPA. So Halfling, I think, is going to be amazing as any kind of TM. Uh, Learning how to use the homes is tough. Um, it can make it harder to pump uh, because if you need to maintain 20, 30, 40 homes all the time to make your province work, there's a lot less space for guilds and universities and even banks because you need these elites. And that's different than what we've seen before. We've seen the same sort of halfling before with the bonus homes, but they were always running pure specs. Having to actually get elites on top of it, I think, is gonna change the balance more than people know. But I'm sure if you sim out how good, a 30-40% home halfling with pure elites is, it's gonna be pretty scary. And anytime you can have high defense and high TPA, you also run into the age-old problem of people with 8+ TPA propping you is really scary. Is what it is. I don't feel like it's supposed to be a propper. It's supposed to be like a high damage Night Striker, but we'll see. I think I prefer a housing bonus to a pop bonus most of the time, but yeah. Old human, income, science, income, city elite, horses. What do we have now? Ooh, that's new. Now humans are orcs with a little more offense than they used to have. They lose some of that income. A little bit of sustain's nice. So, you know, it's it's okay. Doesn't do a whole lot, right? Not sure, you know. I think this is pretty good. Nice to have a giant all of extra gains. I don't know. Seems very boring and straightforward. Uh, you know, it's nice to have more offense. Humans always are really boring, so there's not a lot to talk about. Orcs. Orcs have dungeons, don't know why. Huge enemy kills. Mercs and prisoners doesn't matter that much. So what we're really looking at is kill stacking. That's all that Orc is about here. Science penalty, probably not as bad as the honor penalty, so that's a buff. +1 elite offense, that's a buff. Uh, typo. So overall, I think that's a pretty decent buff for orcs, but you just don't have that gains potential anymore. Um, I think I actually prefer this kind of orc a lot more. Stacking kills, Wrathful Smite, Bloodlust. I think that's a crazy toolkit. Uh, it's it's something you kind of need to make work as a kingdom, because on your own, kills are nice, but you're not really making a huge impact. But if your whole kingdom works around it, that's pretty good. Oh, everyone have 3/3 soldiers? Thought it was just gnome. Just that fairies are 2/2. I only looked one above gnome. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, had no idea. So yeah, the kills you can get: Bloodlust, enemy casualties, Onslaught, or Salvation if you're just looking at kill ratios. And then you stack like a shitload of dungeons. Don't really care about this or this. I don't think that much about the actual offense of these things, but I like kills. I like kills, and I like offense. So the issue here is that I don't know why anyone's going to pick Dryad when Orc is available, because Dryad's offense is almost the same once you factor in Bloodlust and these things. So I think Dryad needs a little something else. I'm not sure what. Uh, but yeah, I like this. I would play this for sure. Know what as, but it doesn't matter. Orc Smash. If everyone picks it, though, I'm not picking it. That's the Smiles way. I only pick things no one else picks. Undead. Regular undead. Regular things. What we got here? Global military casualties. That's pretty nice. Um, having minus defensive casualties lets you play quite a bit differently. Um, running turtly undeads can be really efficient, uh, because you've got, a modest amount of build space, and you're really efficient hitting plagued people. And so if you run less offense but you plague people, you get the same amount of hits. Now you've got more defense with the minus casualties. Eventually, some people just get a bit screwed. Uh, Ghost workers, that's a nice bonus. So fairly big buff, decent buff. Looks like we're back to being able to train elites, but they're really expensive. And the elite got buffed, so wages really, 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 really sucks. Uh, just compensate with a bit of extra income and wage science. And then these undead look scary. That's a lot of offense, and you can run lower EPA. So here's the thing, you can run like 10 elites per acre and 10 despec per acre instead of something more like 12 and 8 or 13 and 7. And with this higher defense value, its high raw value, you can put out a pretty respectable amount of offense and have a really high defense with casualties and plagues built in. And this is a crazy good turtle. I don't know if I would pair it with. You can pair it with something like Warrior to really max out those numbers, Cleric to just totally sustain. If you went with Tact, you'd get a lot of free defense to stack with your D-specs per acre. You get some built-in speed. I think Undead's got a lot of potential in a way that it doesn't usually, while also not being all that scary on its surface. No, I like that. I think Undead and Orc are pretty fun. Human's pretty boring. Yeah, I like the flavor of the races. They're, they're good. Yeah, let's get into personalities. This looks the same. This is slightly higher. Artisan. If every elite is more expensive, Artisan is a really good buff because of Tree of Gold. So, Artisan's strong. You can have a lot of offense. You can have a lot of troops. And you can protect yourself really well against Night Strike if they can't arson your if they can't raise or arson your guard stations or watchtowers. You can build a really strong tanky province that fits in a lot of elites. I think artisans do well. Uh, you got to use them right. I don't know if you want a lot of artisans or a few artisans. You can argue both. I like artisan. I think orc artisans do really well because of, they tend to get night striked a lot. Um, I wonder if the undead artisan wouldn't be really good with that elite, actually. Something to think about. Paladin, uh, keep in mind with the support spell changes, the paladin is actually like way buffed because now it has these spells as if like no one else has those spells. So it's like it got a buff equivalent to all of these spells. So it's the only province that's got, minus E and minus W protection, casualties. It can afford the self spells with the minus self spell cost. So I think Paladin's a pretty good pick for your whole core this age compared to previous ages because you can't just whore out these spells quite as easily. Yeah, yeah, I think it's nice. Heretic wizard production is fine. Minus thieves lost, minus wizards lost. Those are really, really good quality of life. There's your plus damage in the form of guile, your common spells, good channeling effectiveness. The only issue is that Mystic and Rogue are both getting revelations and Heretic isn't. So I think you might want to see one more small buff on Heretic, but it's a really standard normal Heretic. I think it's strong. Is it any different in last stage? So you're actually losing some wizard production, but you're gaining wizard sustain. Uh, eh, eh, it's okay. I don't think it's as good as the other two having revelation, but I think if you want to run a tanky or turtley style, or you expect other people to run a tanky turtle style, you're going to want a couple heretics for that nightmare. I miss not having fool's gold this age a lot. I think that plus damage is almost always worth looking into. So guile or any form of plus damage is always very scary. You could run a halfling heretic with guile and really push that cunning up, and suddenly you're doing like 50% extra damage. I don't know. But does it compare to Mystic or Rogue? I don't think it does. I think it's worse. I think you should just run Mystics and Rogues and only have as many heretics as you need to cast Fool's Gold or Nightmare. Which, depending who you are, maybe one heretic, maybe three, maybe more if you want. If you got rid of Revelation from Mystic and Rogue, I think actually Heretic's in a pretty good spot. I regret not having Heretics this age. I have some Avian Mystics that I think actually would have done really well as Avian Heretics because I've had the pop space to run Thieves, and having this thievery bonus, this guile bonus, this crime bonus, I think it would have gone a long way. I think just the focus on WPA from the Mystic wasn't as good as it could have been, so I don't know how that worked out for other kinds of hybrids, but for the hybrids I had, that was my thought. Mystic, they're losing a little bit of wizard stuff. I think it's fine. I think Mystic's just got a really big buff with Revelations. I think it's a really good hybrid with Revelations. I think it's really good all the time. Not much to see here. I think the biggest buff to Mystic is actually that Elf and Fairy and Halfling all seem to have more defense than before. So those are things that buff Mystic. And then I think Revelation you need on TMs. It's a little bit sad seeing how much more science the attackers get. But, you know, Rogue, pretty much the exact same story as Mystic. It actually got a slight buff. It lost the thief cost. Uh, Revelations. I think mostly Rogue is getting buffed because there's more defense on the server, and Revelations is a big way to go. So, very par for the course. Nothing too big in the changes there. We've got a new personality raider, extra horse strength, can't get your horses robbed, 10% stables, 10% combat gain. So, +1 horse strength is worth like 7% offense on average. It's like this is half as good as warrior, and then this is 10% land, which is just 10% land, which is good. Everyone likes 10% land. This you can't convert into a land-based bonus. You just got to think about how often is Steel Warhorse a problem. It's pretty often a problem. Like, if you want to be able to run low watchtowers, your core can lose like 15% of their offense map because of Steel Warhorse. So this allows you to sort of skirt by with less watchtowers as an attacker. Otherwise, you kind of need that like 20% watchtower just to protect your horses and of course against Night Strike and all that. But you know, and then plus gains. Plus gains are kind of as good as plus or minus speed. So, you know, that's a modest buff. This is a modest buff. This is a modest buff. I think it all stacks into something that's pretty good all around, but doesn't excel at anything. It really does a little bit of everything here. This this is offensive, this is defensive, this is economical, and this is like very general. I don't think it'll be especially popular, but I think anyone could make this work pretty well. So I think it's cute, it's nice. Sage. Sage is the same, except better learn protection. Yep. So depends how long the age is, how good Sage is. If it's a 9 week age, Sage is kind of weak. If it's a 10.5 week age, Sage is pretty strong. Um, Sage is really good at the end of age if you play right. And if you don't pick Sage, but you still focus on books, you can usually get to a pretty similar spot. So, Sage, you really have to exploit the early and mid age and really, really, really push your science as hard as you can. And it's pretty easy to sort of get relaxed and skip doing that. And you do fall behind if you don't keep up on a big book lead. So, Sage is tough. I think competent kingdoms can run Sage Core and get decently strong by mid and late age. I think micros can run it. I think Sage is fine. I think buffing it would be a mistake. So keeping it the same is fine to me. Tactician is almost unrecognizable. So now you get forts and barracks as one building. Uh, so because this building is going to be so good, you're going to run 25 of them, say 20 of them. Um, so how good is that? Well, it's worth like 20% attack speed and 20% defense. So that's fine. But you don't have any other bonus. Accurate espionage, yeah, it's a nice thing. Clear sight's nice. But I think tactician needs something else here. It used to just have this built in basically. Like half the bonus you're getting out of this is something they already had. So, uh, I'm a fan of forts on my core. So if I can add free forts into my build, I'm pretty happy. But all this is worth is at best 20% land. In realistic terms, it's more worth like 15% land, which on its own is not good enough. Um, you can see other personalities just they edge out more bonus than me. So I think we'll see some sort of buffed tactician, whether it gets its old speed back or general or some sort of bonus to make it on par with other personalities. But I think this thing is staying. So you just got to figure out how do I use a fast, tanky core. Usually the answer is find a way to trade against the enemy better. If you're faster and you have more defense, you're winning trade wars really well. And, then you're not getting raised easily, you're not getting masked easily, but you're probably not breaking enemy TMs as easily either. So if your core can beat their core, but your core can't beat their TMs, then maybe your TMs need to be able to beat their TMs, something like that. There's a bit of rock, paper, scissors going along, but I think there's a lot of potential for high defense core to outperform a lot of other builds. Uh, you just gotta know how to make it work. War hero. War heroes losing elite converts and heroes inspiration. Heroes inspiration is an amazingly good spell, so that's shitty. You know, wages are really important to attackers in the modern era, so that's a hit. But reflect magic, really handy on an attacker with mind focus, extra wizards. These two spells are amazing together. So good. So good. Um, and I think that will, because of the wizard defense there, you're going to keep more of your wizards or more of your peasants. You're going to be greeted less, and that will amount to covering the wages you would have lost from HI. And +3 military efficiency, 3% offense, 3% defense. It's really small, but it's a good buff, and everyone's happy with it. I think this is a pretty modest buff to War Hero, which I think is mostly warranted because we see very few War Heroes on the server. I'm running War Heroes this age. I've got a lot of Viscounts, I've got a lot of counts, and they're still pretty lame. It's really hard for this bonus to be as good as just running Warriors with 15% more offense, because even at count, you don't have 15% more offense, and offense is pretty important for attackers. So, but now that you can sort of make yourself a bit more bulwarky, I can see it. I think there's a lot of ways to make this work now without just feeling like a worse warrior. So I like this quite a bit. Does it need a little something? Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to say. What do we have for warrior? Used to be 15% offense. Training time I don't care about. It's a modest buff for End of War Ceasefire. Prisoner and Merc strength I don't care about. So you're losing 3% offense and you're gaining weird armories and weird siege. Let's look at siege here. So 100,000 siege is only 6%. So 3% more gains with a modest buff. 4.5% more gains at 250,000. And 6% gains at 500,000. If you push it all the way to 1,000,000, you're looking at getting up to 10% more gains. So that's, by late age, a really big bonus to Warrior. You're looking at 10% gains late age. That's pretty good. And it sort of scales. So, some scaling bonuses are nice to have. Armory, so I don't really like running much more than 10% TGs because you're usually starved for space and the offense buff's only worth so much. But with this you're going to be running 15 or 20 TGs all the time, which is good and gives you the effect of armories. So in war, what that's doing is giving you 20% less wages. The draft cost doesn't really matter that much in war, so it's just wages. Wages are really nice. It's like having HI. But as you bloat and you gain land and your building efficiency goes down in war and you get raised, this benefit is diminishing, and wages alone is not a huge benefit. Uh, it's nice in war. This is probably worth more than HI in war. Pretty good bonus. So what's where you're getting, late age 10% gain sciences minus 20% wages. You lose a little bit of offense. I'd say overall that's quite a buff. But what this is going to do is when you're sitting out of war, you're going to be so much more sustainable. When you're learn waving, when you're waiting for a war, you're just sitting around, being able to draft for less, train for less, pay less wages is so valuable when you're sitting around out of war. And because you can sit on these out of war, you're just sort of always in a semi-eco build. Like you never have to switch these armories over. You don't have that rebuild cost. So, what I might normally be doing is sitting on like 30% homes out of war, maybe a couple banks, and then I've got to raise them and rebuild them into something else, and that's costing, half of a dragon. But now I can sit on these instead of my homes and get a lot of economic benefit. But this is a much more readiness, efficiency sort of bonus. So I think big buff on Warrior. I think it's needed because the racial offense buffs aren't as big as the racial defense buffs for the TMs. So I'd say we look at Warrior and try to balance Tactician, War Hero, everything else around the strength of this Warrior. And then I think, yeah, we're looking at a pretty exciting bit of proposed changes here. So good work to the changes committee so far, and we'll see what we want and revised. Feel free to ping me and Muga and ask what I think about anything at any time, because I love Utopia. Ciao.